Hello and welcome to the Baseball Talk Radio Show. This week we have some sad news to report, and we also have the Baseball Writers of America Hall of Fame vote for you on this week's Baseball Talk Radio Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show, where we're talking baseball with you every week here on the Baseball Talk Radio Show. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Rich. How you doing this week?
Pretty good, pretty good. And I'm so glad you could join us this week. I know you're a little under the weather, as we all have been getting this winter season, but it's great to hear you and able to make the show.
Well, we've had some, just awful weather here in the Northeast, and more bad weather coming, but at least it's not snow, Rich.
Yeah, that we can keep our fingers crossed. I think we're both waiting on a nor'easter again, but it's just going to be high winds and rain, but still that little winter chill in the air, as we're talking about almost a month or so before the start of spring training, just shy of a month, actually. Usually around Valentine's Day is when the players report. And we're chugging along. We've only got, 3.5 weeks to go before we start seeing those beautiful pictures of Arizona and southern Florida.
Sunny skies, hopefully, and palm trees. And I think you're right, like 3.5 weeks to go until that happens. So it's getting near there, Rich, and we'll have a lot more to report, hopefully, as we get closer and as we get into spring training.
Yes, indeed. And as we stated at the start of the show, of course, we have some bad news to report. Just came over the news wires this afternoon. Ex-Kansas City Royals pitcher Yordano Ventura passed away tragically in the Dominican Republic of an automobile accident. And Gary, you have another player that also passed away just before he did over there in the Dominican Republic as well.
Yes, former major leaguer Andy Marte, another Dominican Republic native, passed away in yet another automobile accident. And, Rich, it wasn't long ago, I think 2 years ago, Oscar Taveras, the phenom for the Cardinals, he passed away in the Dominican Republic in an automobile accident. And, we've been knocking the Dominican Republic a lot, but there were issues with steroid use, and now with these deaths due to automobile accidents, there's something going on, Rich. I think I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't know what you can do. I know that it's these players' homes, and they want to go to their homes, but man, I think I'd be moving my family somewhere safe. I don't know if it's the roads. I don't know if there's alcohol or drugs involved in this. I don't know whether it's fast cars, though. The one picture for Ventura, it looked like a Jeep almost. Don't know if the roads are bad. I don't know if these guys just love speed and they can't handle it if there's a curve in the road. I mean, I don't know what it is, but we've had 3 deaths in the Dominican in the last 3 years, I think, of players in car accidents. And don't forget Jose Fernandez passing away in a motorboat accident this past season. I mean, this has been I don't know if you want to call it an epidemic, Rich, but we're losing a lot of young players now to whatever. Now, there was some drugs and alcohol involved in the Jose Fernandez deal, but I don't know what baseball can do about it, Rich, but boy, somebody's got to try to do something.
Yeah, it certainly seems like more than just a tragedy here and there. It seems like, as you said, we're hearing it every 6 months. It's seeming to happen over there. And you don't know what's going on over there because we're here, and that is sort of a different country into itself. The The roads may be a lot more hazardous. And as you said, Gary, alcohol and or drugs could be involved as well. So we're just going to have to wait to see if there's a an autopsy to release those results. But nevertheless, just a sad time for fans of baseball and the baseball players themselves and their families. What a shame it is when this happens. It's terrible.
And Rich, we don't know too if there's something else, totally criminal element involved in this. If you remember a few years ago, I don't know if it was in Venezuela, if it was the Dominican or what, but one of the pitchers, former pitcher, got kidnapped, and there's in some of these Latin American country, there's threats to their lives or their extortion. They'll kidnap family members and want to be paid to release them because these guys are making big money. Who knows if that had something to do with it? I know we're getting all over the map now with conspiracy theories, but it definitely seems like there's something going on in the Dominican that I don't know who should look into it, but maybe baseball needs to put some investigators down there and try to find out what the heck it is.
Yeah, and it's a shame. You would figure some of these guys would want to pack up and move to a more secure area, move to an area that they're going to thrive in, and they're not going to have these problems. But I guess when you're from there, born there, that's your home, and that's where they return in the off season. I mean, they have everything going for them here in the U.S. and for the most part, you even see some of the U.S. players traveling fast in their cars. I mean, who doesn't have a Mercedes or a BMW or a Porsche these days? Look at some of the Washington Nationals players there. They got pulled over for speeding over 100 miles an hour. So those are the stories that don't end up tragically, but yet, it tells you a little bit about, the risks some of these players are taking on a daily basis.
Well, then you have to figure then maybe it's the infrastructure of the country. The roads aren't that good, and one little slip and you're hitting something, or I don't know what it is, but it's just a shame. And two more today. It's just horrible.
Yes, it is. So our condolences go out to the families there, and a big loss for baseball when that happens. Terrible thing. But this past week, Gary, we also had the Baseball Hall of Fame vote announced finally. No surprise to those people that were reading some of the newspapers and the blogs. They pretty well had these players picked in advance, but we have three new baseball players heading to the Hall of Fame in 2017.
Yes, we do, Rich, and I'm not that crazy about them all. I'm a little surprised that Pudge Rodriguez got in on the first ballot, and it took Mike Piazza longer to get in. And there was more steroids surrounding Rodriguez than there was even Piazza. Yet he got in on the first ballot. I don't know if that means that there's a change going on. I mean, the rest of the country is going through public change and moral decay. I guess maybe the baseball writers too are going to start allowing in the steroid era guys. And I mean, Bagwell had a hint of it around him, and Tim Raines, from what I understand, they called him the Rock because he was involved at one time with cocaine. And so I don't know, Tim Raines. I mean, if his numbers weren't good enough 10 years ago, what makes them good enough now to get in to the Hall of Fame? But he's in, and I'm not thrilled with the class, but it is what it is.
Yes, it is. And as you said, Ivan Rodriguez getting in on the first ballot. He just got in 76% of the vote. I think you need like 75% to make it in. He's a 14-time All-Star, 13-time Gold Glove, 7 times Silver Slugger. 1999, he was the AL MVP. But as you said, yeah, there was a little question mark surrounding him as far as the steroid use. But I think you sort of summed it up there. And I think a lot of these writers are starting to come around to accepting this now. It seems like since the writers themselves and the Hall of Fame redid how these writers start to vote and who can vote, we've seen a lot more elevation of these players' numbers and the percentages over the years of them uh, going to be elected into the Hall of Fame. Two votes I wanted to see percentage wise was Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds this year. And both players rose up about 10 points apiece. So, the immediate reaction from some baseball writers was, within 3 years, these two guys will be in the Hall of Fame. They're almost guaranteeing it. And that's sort of a shame. As you said, what makes them eligible now that didn't make them eligible a certain number of years ago? Certainly, just like these players, they have their, the things that they've been through with the steroids and the Congress lying to them and whatnot. You've got overall evidence there, but the baseball writers appear that they're going to push this evidence under a rug and accept these players for what they are in the next couple years.
And I think we see with the induction of Tim Raines that the sabermetrics people are having a say, and that's gonna open up a lot of question marks because to me, I think a Hall of Famer should have been a dominating player, and I can't say that any three of these guys were a dominant player. I mean, they were very good players, but when you talk about a Babe Ruth or a Lou Gehrig or a Ty Cobb, they dominated a game. Bob Gibson, Tom Seaver. I don't think Jeff Bagwell, you didn't want to face him in the lineup, but there are a lot of guys you don't want to face in a lineup. You don't want to face Yoenis Cespedes, but as of right now, I don't think Yoenis Cespedes would be a major league, a Hall of Famer. I guess my point is, I guess I'm really old school, and I just don't see these guys on the level. The next level guy I could see that is to me, in my mind, is a Hall of Famer would be Mariano Rivera, without a doubt. And then probably the next one after that would be maybe Mike Trout if he continues along what he's playing now. But and in a strange way, Clemens and Bonds are Hall of Famers, I think. And but they have to clarify these rules. I think they have to. Somebody's got to make a decision about who can go in. They have this character clause that they throw out there, and but it's so you can be defined in so many ways that it's not a good clause to have. And the other thing, Curt Schilling went down this year, and if you want to look at records, look at his records in the postseason. He's probably the greatest postseason pitcher of all time, numbers wise, and yet he went down. Now, there are writers that don't like his political stance, don't like some of the things he said on Twitter, but why should he get punished 5 years after he's, gone on the ballot for what he said now? It shouldn't be based on that. It should be based on what he did as a player. And he was never tainted with the steroids thing. And yet he went down, and there have been those that say, sports writers that have said, I don't like what he said about sports writers. But that's, after he's on the ballot. And that should have nothing to do with it. This is for the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's what you did on the field. And that's the whole argument with Pete Rose, as far as I'm concerned. he should be in there. He is the hit king of all time, and it just kind of diminishes the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I think this year, the eligible guys that could have gotten into the Hall of Fame were maybe, you'd say out of the 34, I would say 18 or so were possible Hall of Fame candidates. The rest were sort of throwaways. If you start taking away the steroid gang like the Clemens, Bonds, Sosa, uh, even Manny Ramirez in there, you got to throw those out. So you've narrowed down the field a few more guys. So who were you going to vote on? I think this is one of those years where that happened. There wasn't an immediate choice that came through that had retired 5 years ago, as of today, and you know that was the problem with this year's group. Had that happened, I think one or two of these guys may not have made it into the hall that got voted in. But that's part of the Hall of Fame voting. They used to keep players on for 15 seasons. Now it's only 10. So they've changed and rearranged the way eligibility requirements are for these players. They've changed the way the voting is done for these players. They're almost molding it where these steroid gangs are going to get in eventually, eventually over time. Of course, they have 5 more years to get in. But if you read some of the big name baseball writers, they're almost guaranteeing them with the rise that both Clemens and Bonds made in this voting year that you can almost write them in as going to be elected. I don't know how true that is. We'll have to see over the next couple of years because, of course, we're going to have new players coming on board that these writers can vote on as well, and they might knock those guys out of the box again. So we'll have to keep our eye on it. As you mentioned in the last show, you introduced me to a writer I'd forgotten about or never knew about. Murray Chase is his name, and he elected not to vote on anybody for this year's ballot. He faced a lot of criticism in the press. A lot of liberal press did not like it. Guys like ESPN and other writers denounced him, but that's his choice, and he's not the only one to ever do it, and he wasn't the only one to do it this year. That's the funny thing.
Right. There was somebody else that did it, and I think somebody else put one name in. I can't remember who it was now, and returned his ballot. So there are, subtle protests, and as you say, I mean, they can do anything they want. Why should you take away his right just because he returned an empty ballot? He didn't think anybody was Hall of Fame worthy on there. And I don't see where the big uproar is, because then are we just electing people just because whoever's on the ballot because we want to put somebody in? I mean, then you run the risk of Melvin Morrow was on this year's ballot. What happens if he got in? I mean, if you know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of crazy. I don't know. I think the older I get, the more old school I get, and I just think that it's so not defined that that these guys are having a hard time with it, and they don't like the 10. They want to be able to vote on more. Yeah. So what does that mean? They're afraid that then there'll be more people getting in. I don't know. I kind of think the opposite. If they were allowed to vote for more people, then you'd probably have less people getting in, right? I would think.
Well, that's the thing. They keep changing the amount of people that are voting. They changed in the last couple of years. They narrowed that down through a lot of old time voters that used to have a say in this. And they've sort of molded it where there's a select group now of, I believe, 330 some odd writers that are voting on this, but it's an intense group. It's not the way it used to be over the years of, guys that may not have been so influenced by social media and things like that. So you've got different things happening within the voting, acceptances, things like that. And it's changed everything. If you ask me, I think from here on out, from 2017 on, you're really going to have to look at these Baseball Hall of Fame votes because it's going to be very interesting to see if these cheaters get let into the Hall of Fame. I think it waters down the whole Hall of Fame itself, and it just would make it terrible, really.
Well, I think they're going to make a distinction. I think they're going to make the distinction about guys that have been tainted but never, fail a drug test. They'll probably get in, but guys like Manny Ramirez, who after the rules were put into effect, then failed 2 drug tests, they're the ones that won't get in. But I think a lot of these guys that are probably, as we say now, tainted, like Clemens and Bonds, and they both went to court and both were vindicated. So, and they never failed the drug test. Now, maybe they had sophisticated ways of beating it, but whatever, they never technically failed. And, neither did Pudge Rodriguez, but he was mentioned in Canseco's book, I believe. And so far, Canseco's been pretty accurate. I hate to say that, but his book has been pretty right on. And, there was always, Bagwell was a skinny kid with the Red Sox. All of a sudden he gets traded and he's this home run hitter with muscles coming out of nowhere. And I don't know. I just and again, Tim Raines, I believe, was involved in that whole 80s cocaine scandal. So I guess this is what we're going to run into. And if they're going to put anybody in as a taint to anybody, and that's not to say that there aren't people in Hall of Fame that are miserable human beings that probably would have never, would have made the top FBI top 10 list as well. But, we're talking about now, and this class in particular, I just don't see, I just don't see these guys as Hall of Famers. I mean, when you consider last year's class was Ken Griffey Jr., who was, definitely a Hall of Famer, and Mike Piazza, who was a Hall of Famer, and it took him a few tries to get in. Compared to this class, I don't think there's any comparison at all.
Well, that's the thing. I think over the years, and this being one of them, the pool of candidates weren't as strong. So rather than vote none of them in, which I think is a tragedy in itself, and that's happened before, these 3 got in. And for whatever reason, as you said, a lot of people don't agree with it, but at least people are going into the Hall of Fame. Look at football, hockey Hall of Fame. It doesn't seem to hold the same luster or, held to the same standards, so to speak, as the Baseball Hall of Fame. But perhaps the Baseball Hall of Fame is going to fall into that category soon because, with this vote and several years from now, votes on, we'll have to see. But it's just going to be an interesting thing is all I could say.
Well, do you think it's the fans? Because baseball fans hold the Hall of Fame more like it's almost like it's a cathedral,
a shrine.
Whereas I don't think and I don't know. I may be totally wrong in this, but the football fans, I don't think they look as the Hall of Fame. The Football Hall of Fame, it's like a nice place to visit, but I don't think it's like we all want to go to Cooperstown and worship at the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the fans that have done that or the same thing with the Hockey Hall of Fame. I'd love to go to visit it too, but I don't know. This is more of a majesty or something, and maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion, but there's more of an awe type of thing with the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, maybe because it's in Cooperstown, there's a lot of urban legend about the whole Hall of Fame with Doubleday and all of that. And it's in this iconic little village in upper New York State, a picture card village. I wonder if it's all that kind of thing that baseball fans have put more on the Baseball Hall of Fame than the other Hall of Fames for sports.
Yeah, I think you have a point there. Before I forget, I wanted to let everyone know Murray Chase's website. It's MurrayChass.com. He doesn't like to call it a blog. It's a website with an article, usually a couple days every week, or a couple times every week he'll write an article, or at least once a week he's been putting one out. But don't call it a blog, even though it sort of looks like one. But he's very old school, so to him, he doesn't like the word blog. He doesn't understand the word blog. To him, it's watered down. It's sort of like a podcast. Ask somebody over 55 about a podcast. They might not know what a podcast is. A what?
Yeah, without a doubt.
So check his column out. He's got a couple good articles. And again, getting back to the Hall of Fame, this next year, 2018's election will feature something that's never been done. All the writers have to divulge who they voted for. That's going to happen a week after the winners are announced. But I think that's wrong, too. I don't see the point in that. It's just going to open more cans of worms, so to speak. I just don't see the point in that at all. I think it's wrong. It's just the way that the Baseball Hall of Fame and the writers are going about this just seems all wrong to me.
I couldn't agree more with you, Rich. I think it's a little stupid. It's going to bring hard feelings maybe among people. And look, we just witnessed on Facebook and Twitter with this past election a lot of hard feelings. And I think you're going to see the same thing, people getting attacked for their choices. We see it now. Murray Chass went under a lot of attacking for not putting anybody on the ballot. And I don't see the argument. I think it's his choice. I don't think, again, his rights should be taken away. He didn't think anybody was worthy, so why do you just vote for somebody for the sake of putting them on? But I think you're going to see a lot of that. And letting your vote out there, I'm not in favor of it, but what are you going to do?
Well, we'll have to see how that shakes out with the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And that class is going in for 2017. And the baseball season is going to start one way or another. But interesting talk there. We'll have to see how it goes in the future. And Gary, this past week, we had a couple emails coming in.
Wow. Okay, Rich.
And if you've heard that in the background, oops, not that one. It was supposed to be this one. The old "You've Got Mail" sound. What would we do without it?
That's right.
Well, we did get a couple emails this past week. Jack, our longtime listener and your good friend as well, Gary, listens to Mets Musings very often. He writes that he'd love to be watching baseball right now. He's sort of jonesing for it here in the winter off season. And he wants to know if we know anything where he could watch the Caribbean Winter League playoffs, whether it be online or on television. I did a little research myself on it, and I'm not quite sure. I didn't find anything on it, to be honest with you. I subscribe to MLB.TV myself, and occasionally I can find some information out about foreign playoffs and things like that, where they're going to air them on TV and online here, but I could not. I would venture to say that maybe MLB Network might have some programming from that, but I haven't heard or seen anything on the Caribbean League playoffs.
Yeah, I would have thought. I remember a couple of years that there was something. I think ESPN had it one year, maybe. Um, but I really think that it may be nothing this year because of the World Baseball Classic. They could be putting their resources into that instead of the any of the Dominican or Caribbean leagues or whatever other leagues that are going on. So I don't really know, and I think Jack's question came about because I had said that one of the guests I had on was watching and following the Caribbean League, I believe it was, and I kind of misspoke. It wasn't really, he wasn't watching it, but he was following it, and I guess following it online. So that's where Jack got the idea that it may have been on television. But the only thing I could say is check out MLB Network, and if you get SNY, they keep running Mets Classic games. If that's what if you want to go back and watch an old game, and Yes Network reruns some of the Yankee classics. I don't know if any other local or cable stations that follow teams in other cities, if they'll go back and run classic games or not. But that's the best advice I can give right now. Well, go to the library and rent. If you can get into this, Ken Burns baseball and just enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. And or if you have the MLB.TV subscription, I have the yearly one, the full fledged one, so to speak. It takes me from spring training right through now. I can go and watch game 6 and 7 of the World Series if I wanted to this afternoon, uh, as well as any other game. Every game gets DVR'd, so you can go back and watch your favorite team play. Take on the Mets. You can watch every series of every game of your favorite team. So always plenty of spots to watch baseball, even in the off season. Not live baseball always, but certainly some replays. And just a few years ago, that didn't exist, Gary, where you could go back and watch your favorite team right online there and watch any game you wanted to watch.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's certainly changing, and I would imagine that someday you'll just be able to get your own team online, and they'll work out this whole area thing that you blackouts and on the streaming, and because it's coming anyway.
Yeah, and recently, within the last week, for Phillies fans, they got a good word that they will be able to watch if you're a subscriber of Comcast Sportsnet, a local TV subscriber. You'll be able to watch your team online from wherever they're playing from, even road games, I believe, and home games. So, if as long as you have that cable subscription as a Phillies fan starting this year, you're going to be able to watch your team anywhere online by signing in. They're going to have like a dual sign in thing where you're going to have to prove that you have a valid cable subscription, so on and so forth. So you'll be able to watch the Phillies online or your tablet, wherever you happen to be. If you're on business or, a few states away, you can still tune into the game. So that'll be good.
Well, they're doing it now. I mean, if you got HBO at home and you want to watch it on your phone or your tablet, they'll ask you for your provider. You just type in your password and everything for your provider, and I guess they run a check, and bam, bam, you're on watching HBO. So, and that's not. I mean, Showtime, all of them now have that. Fox News, I think CNN, all of them. So. That's probably what the point they're going to get to, because they figure they're getting your money anyway in the cable, so they might as well provide this extra service. And I think it's a good thing. How many times? Look, I can remember my wife had surgery on opening day 2 years ago, and I was lucky enough that the hospital had cable, and that the opening day game was on ESPN, so I was able to watch it through ESPN. But I wouldn't have been able to see it otherwise, and would have kind of been ashamed to miss that because it was a lot of waiting around, So at least I got to enjoy some of the game on that day as well. So I think it's a thing that its time has come. People are watching a lot on their phones and streaming on their tablets and their computers, and I think it's time.
Yeah, mobile is exploding in all categories, even podcasts. A lot of the podcasts are being listened to on mobile devices now, and that's always been the case with podcasting. I mean, you had your iPods back in the day, and you downloaded them. Now you have your phones, and they double as an iPod. So awesome news there. And another email we got this past week, Trip writes that he enjoys the show. Keep on doing a great job, guys. And, he wants to know a couple of our baseball favorite movies. And this one I'll have to defer to you, Gary. I don't watch too many movies myself.
Well, everybody says that their favorite is Field of Dreams. I'm going to give you another one that I really watched and I really liked, and that was the Clint Eastwood movie, The Trouble with the Curve. It's a great baseball movie, and it's got a lot to do with it's a father-daughter thing, but it's just fascinating. And not being a sabermetrics guy, I think it did point out some things about the fallacy of sabermetrics, and it really was, to a certain extent, it was an anti-sabermetric movie. It follows an old-time scout who's beyond his time, and his daughter's a lawyer, and they're estranged, and they get together once. But I won't go into everything. But the trouble with the curve, Clint Eastwood, and I think he directed it. I'm not sure, but that's one of my favorites. And of course, Field of Dreams is good and a little screwy to figure out sometimes. But if you like a comedy, Major League, you can't beat that. That's pretty cool, pretty funny. For the Love of the Game isn't bad. The Natural, of course, is a little far-fetched, but it's pretty cool to see the old-time unis and the gloves and stuff and the stadium and all of that kind of stuff. And another one that's good, and it's really got to do with the Yankees, is the Billy Crystal vehicle 61, about Roger Maris's home run race with Mickey Mantle. That's another good one. And finally, and the name Bang the Drum Slowly is another good one with Robert De Niro. I think that's The Odd Couple has a big baseball scene in it. We were trying to figure out movies that had mention of the Mets in it at one point, being a bunch of Met fans at work, and The Odd Couple does have that. There's a triple play at the old Shea Stadium as Oscar is sitting in the press booth getting annoyed by Felix on the phone, and misses the triple play. But there's lots of the good ones out there, and there's lots of bad ones out there too. But,
That's true.
Anything about the Babe seems to be pretty bad, but I've watched them with the John Goodman as the Babe. That was pretty awful, I have to say. I actually like, because maybe I grew up with it, the William Bendix one, which was really pretty bad, but it's so bad it's good.
I'm sort of a documentary type of person myself. I like this past year, the MLB Network had 3 big releases. One was Babe Ruth. Ted Williams was another one this past year, and there was a third one as well. So I'm more of a guy that prefers the real documentary type of movie rather than a full out movie myself. But three good ones last year. Can't go wrong with MLB Network. During the off season, they have a lot of movies and a lot of specials, things like that. And so we hope you catch up on that. And thanks for the emails, guys.
More, a couple more actually.
Okay.
You have Netflix. There is, and this one's for you, Rich. I don't know if you have Netflix or not, but if you do, there's a great documentary on, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's about a minor league team that played in Portland that Kurt Russell played on. His father owned the team, and it's pretty interesting because it was a wacky group of guys that played there, and that's on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it. And also, there's my good friend Frank Nappi wrote a book called The Legend of Mickey Tussle. He wrote a series of them. There's 3 books out. And they took the first movie, and while the movie isn't that good, they changed the era it was set in. They changed the ending. They changed a lot of things in it. But anyway, if you're interested in it, it's called Walk a Mile in His Shoes, I think it is. And it's based on the book The Legend of Mickey Tussle, and he also had 2 other books, Sophomore Campaign and Welcome to the Show. So the books are awesome. The movie not so much, but if you're looking for something and you happen to be on, I believe it's on Netflix, I would check that out. And if you go into documentaries and look for that one on the Portland, I can't think of the name now. It escapes my memory, Rich. It's old age.
It might come back to you by the end of the show, so we can.
It might, but I know it has something to do with Kurt Russell. His father owned the team, and I believe he played on it too. I haven't watched it in a while, so. But I think he played on that team. You know, Kurt Russell was quite a good ball player, and I was looked at by the Dodgers, I believe, maybe even drafted by them.
Ah, very cool.
But he was a child actor as well, and
there was an interesting documentary on Mike Piazza last year on the MLB Network as well.
I did see that.
Yeah, it was called Against the Odds, the Mike Piazza story, narrated by Matthew Broderick. So great bunch of shows there for you to catch up on the off season here. Won't be too long before we'll be talking spring training. But if you want to drop us an email, you can drop one to Gary at baseballtalkradio.com. I can be reached at rich@baseballtalkradio.com as well. And we encourage you to follow us on Twitter. Go ahead and follow us. We'll announce some shows that we're doing, some special things that we're working on there on Twitter. And we're also on Facebook too. Just search for the Baseball Talk Radio Show. We'd appreciate if you followed our feed there and became our friend on Facebook. Gary, it's been a great show talking baseball with you here, even in the off season. Some of our guests we have trying to get lined up here still before the season starts up, of course, and just a whole bunch of fun talking about baseball here.
And Rich, in your infinite wisdom, you're correct. I did find the name out. It's called The Battered Bastards of Baseball. It's a documentary about Kurt Russell and his father and the Portland Mavericks. So I believe that's still available on Netflix. So if it's entertaining, if nothing else, and it's got some interesting facts in it. So go check that out.
Very cool. And before we go, I just remembered this one. I did a little research on this during the week. Of course, we had a new president sworn in the other day. We saw the helicopter fly off, and off went Barack Obama sailing into the sunset. But did you know that there's a big market of signed baseballs by presidents? Prior to last year, you could have bought as many baseballs as you wanted signed from Donald Trump at about $100 a piece. Now that he is the president of the United States, Gary, that price went up to around $1,000 now.
Wow.
So that's a big increase there. So you smart baseball fans out there, the guys that were in the know on this, probably went ahead and scoured ahead and bought up a few baseballs. I wasn't one of them, but I'm
I
sure.
wonder if you send him a baseball, would he sign it?
I don't know. That would probably be tough now.
Yeah,
People-
he's a little busy.
But even Barack Obama himself had a baseball sell at an auction, believe it or not, for $1,480, I believe it was. So
Wow.
a lot of money there in some presidential baseballs. So if you know some people that you think someday may be president, you might want to have them give you a signed baseball.
Sign it now.
So interesting developments there in the world of baseball and collectibles and things like that. And Gary, can't wait for spring training season to start now. Even though we've got a couple weeks away, it's still it's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, but closing in, Rich, and it should make life a lot easier.
Yes, it will. The national pastime will be back. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show, everyone. Don't forget, drop us a line and wherever you're listening from. Let us know you're listening. We'd love to put your comment on the air. So give us an email here and there.
Yep, we'll see you all next time.